Shall we try this today? All right, sing with me if you can. You better watch out. You better not cry. You better not pout. I'm telling you why. Why? Santa Claus is coming to town. Keep going. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He knows if you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness sake. You ever thought about how creepy that song is? I skipped the second line, which is this. He's making a list. He's checking it twice. He's gonna find out who's naughty and nice. That song would terrify me if I really thought about the words. The kids sing it with smiles, and they're excited because, hey, Santa Claus is coming to town. Last night, our family watched The Polar Express, one of my favorite movies of all time, just because of both the cinematography and the story. But it's just incredible how excited everybody gets with that last line. Santa Claus is coming to town, but think about the rest. He's coming as a judge. He's coming to determine whether you've been good or bad. He's coming to determine whether you get anything this year or whether the entirety of Christmas skips you by. That's kind of a scary thing. That gives Santa a whole lot of power that I don't think I want to give anyone, real or not. But there's a point to that song, and a point that I think is important for us to recognize. And that point is this: it is really hard to be good. It's just hard to be good. And one of the greatest secrets of all of life is that doesn't get easier as you get older. Kids tend to think it is. They think that adults just magically get this ability to be good, but adults have a really hard time being good too. So, see, as we look at the 6 primary traditions throughout this Advent season, the 6 primary traditions that make up all of Christianity, we're calling them the streams. The streams of water, those small rivulets that flow together into the one larger river. This image comes from Richard Foster's book, The Streams of Living Water, fitting name. And these 6 streams, these traditions of the faith, flow together to form the biblically based metaphor of the rolling river of faith. So today, as we transition from the first stream, which is the contemplative stream, or the prayer-filled life, over into the second stream, which is called the holiness stream, or the righteous life, I want to talk for a second about how those two interact. They're not completely separate. I hope we don't get that image, that all 6 of these streams are 6 completely separate things. No, these streams flow into each other. They lead into each other, and they flow back and forth between them. We'll get back to Santa Claus in a second. Richard Foster says this in his book, or pretty close to it. He says, the prayer-filled life forms the foundation for holy living. Only with ever-deepening intimacy with God can we enter into an ever-deepening reformation of our heart and mind. The holiness tradition, which Richard Foster calls the righteous life, focuses on drawing nearer to God by emulating his character and his behaviors. In essence, by being good, the way Jesus was good. And here, the capital G in that word, good. But see, we all know that we can't just decide one day to be good and poof, there you have it. How many times have you tried to be good, to break a bad habit, or to start a good one, only to fail? Think all the way back to the last time you tried to be good and it didn't work out. Do you have to go earlier than getting up this morning? I can tell you that my personal number of these attempts reaches well into the thousands after nearly 50 years of life. Because, folks, the reality is it's hard to be good. And we can't just choose to be good out of the blue, or we would all do it, because there's such value in goodness. Tomorrow in our sermon, we're going to talk about Joseph, who was famously known as a righteous man, and we'll talk about what that says about him. But even he found it hard to be good. But see, when our lives follow the contemplative pattern, when we work toward living the prayer-filled life, things inside of us start to change. See, when you draw closer, intimately closer to Jesus, you find in yourself a natural longing to be like him. You find it easier to allow for that reformation of your heart and mind. And that's really what holiness is all about. It's about a reforming of your thinking, a reforming of your desires, a reforming of yourself to want to be more like Jesus. It's caring less for the pleasures of this world and caring more about the joys of being Christ-like. And folks, I'm sorry to say it, but you can't just muscle into that one. You can't just muscle through temptation. It doesn't work that way. So as we move into our next week and we talk about the holiness stream, I don't want us to think that we're moving past the contemplative and that that's in the past. Prayer is the first step toward goodness. Because prayer is when we sit with God and try to think God's thoughts after him. It's when we try to sit with God and see the world the way that he sees it. To love the things that he loves. To hate the things that God hates. And to live in his constant presence. Not because he's going to be a judge like Santa Claus is. He doesn't see you when you're sleeping and know when you're awake and know if you're bad or good. Well, he does all those things, but not as a judge to determine whether we get good or bad gifts, but rather as a loving, calming, peaceful coach, mentor, presence in our lives. So God doesn't act like that judge who's watching every minute to see if you're good or bad. But rather, we sit in his constant presence in prayer so that we can emulate, we can imitate who he is, and truly understand that age-old cliche, what would Jesus do? So as we talk about righteousness, I hope that comes through. I hope we begin to understand God not as the great judge in the sky and we have to be good in order to earn his approval, but rather that God is simply what goodness is. And so as we sit with him, we will become more like him. Hey, I encourage you to join us tomorrow morning for worship. It's right here on our YouTube channel at 10:30 tomorrow morning. Yeah, you could wait until 11 or 12. I do that with my football games all the time so that I can skip past the commercials. Well, we don't have commercials. But I encourage you to join us live because when you do, you can use the chat bar. You can be in communion with other people and chat back and forth and talk back and forth. And there's just something special about celebrating together. Oh, and tomorrow is communion. And so please prepare some kind of bread and some kind of juice so that you can take communion in your own home as we take part in it together tomorrow. All right, we'll see you tomorrow at 10:30 and then back here Monday again for our next blog. Have a great weekend.